Hello, my name is Azita Emiri. I am an associate professor at the University of Alabama in Huntsville College of Nursing. Glad to be here with you all, and thank you so much for watching the video. And my email address is listed here, and it is it's azita.emiri@uah.edu. In case after watching the video you come up with some questions, I'll be happy to take any questions after through the email. So I'm picking up here after Dr. Barbara Sattler's presentation on food choices and human health, and I'm going to focus on meat consumption and health effects. Before going to the health effects, I want to show you this graph that shows the countries that eat the most meat, and the United States actually is in the very top here with 219 pounds per capita. This is for 2018. And then looking at this other map, you will see that developing countries have the least meat consumption, and as you saw in the other one, Americans have the most, and even the Americans' meat consumption is higher than the American Heart Association's guideline. This is also a graph that shows that the pounds produced of meat animals follows exactly what we see in the consumer's consumption. For instance, if you look at this green line, that is the broilers or chicken and poultry production, and then you look at this blue line here, that's for the same meat production, you will see that this is almost the same trend. And also I want to show you here that if you consider this meat consumption graph on your left side, and we see, for instance, that you look at the total meat consumption that has a trend that is increasing from 1909 until 2019, and then we look at here in this other map on the obesity rate, you will see that the obesity rate picks up almost the same trend as the meat consumption, but it doesn't mean that meat consumption is the only reason we are seeing more obesity. There are so many other risk factors, for example, genetic, environmental exposures, or even the lifestyle or sedentary lifestyle or night shifts for nurses, and all these things might have a contribution in the rate of obesity. But I wanted to just show that this is also the same trend here. And also, if you look at meat consumption and diabetes, here we will see the same trend. This is our meat consumption, the same graph that you saw in the previous slide. And here I have the diabetes that is showing in all type of races, white, black, and Asian. We see the increase of diabetes. And again, it doesn't mean that meat consumption is the only reason that we are seeing higher rate of diabetes. There are other factors as well. So we have very little data about nurses' health, but as you all know, we have a big database on nurses' health. A study that showed that nurses with high body mass indices are more likely to develop diabetes, and also the prevalence of obesity and overweight in nurses in the US is 55%. That is for 2011 and 16. So we might see a little bit more on that recently, or if the trend has come down. I have not seen new publication on that. In another study, 77% of nurses reported that their diets are low in fruit and vegetables. So we need to fix that one. And also, other study reported that nurses' hypertension was on 14%. The 22% of them had high cholesterol. 37% were overweight, and 28% were obese. So the Nurses' Health Study reported that nurses' total fruit and vegetables and total vegetable consumption were related to lower all-cause mortality, which means that this is kind of a new study. This means that when they had higher amount of vegetables and fruit consumption, then they had lower all-cause mortality rate. And this is also interesting that 77% of nurses believe that their patients and families will be more likely to take their advice seriously if they follow it themselves. So this is very interesting because we know that when we advise patients, we need to follow the same pattern or the same guideline that we are asking them to follow. So it's interesting that 77% of nurses, they know and they are aware of that. So going back to meat and health effects, meat consumption and health effects, the association between meat intake and cancer risk has been comprehensively studied. And also several prospective studies have assessed the association of unprocessed red meat and processed meat consumption with risk of cardiovascular diseases and diabetes. We will look at it in more detail in the next slide. So there's a new study by Papier and colleagues that they have studied 475,000 men and women in the UK, not the United States, and they have looked at the unprocessed red meat consumption and have found significant association between consumption of unprocessed red meat and higher risk of ischemic heart disease, pneumonia, diverticular disease, colon polyps, diabetes, but also they have found low risk of iron deficiency anemia in those who are really eating more red meat. The same study have looked at the processed meat consumption and have found again ischemic heart diseases, higher risk of ischemic heart diseases with higher rate of consuming processed meat, and pneumonia, diverticular diseases, colon polyps, and diabetes. And also they have looked at the total unprocessed red meat consumption and processed red meat consumption and have found almost the same results of higher ischemic heart disease, pneumonia, diverticular diseases, colon polyps, and diabetes. And that's interesting that when they look at poultry meat consumption in the same study, they have found association between high consumption of poultry meat and high GERD and gastritis and duodenitis, diverticular diseases, gallbladder diseases, diabetes, and lower risk of iron deficiency anemia. There are also some other studies that showing that really switching from red meat to white meat doesn't really help with lowering weight and also cholesterol or body lipid profiles. And there are a couple of studies in this matter. So maybe really practicing or getting more white meat instead of red meat is not a good choice. So the question is, what are our options in less meat consumption? As nurses, which one we can pick up and which one we can transfer to our patients? One of our options actually is the Mediterranean diet. This is the diet that emphasizes on whole grains, vegetables, legumes, fruits, nuts, seeds, herbs, and spices. And fish and seafood and dairy and poultry are included in moderation, and red meat, sweets, and processed food are consumed minimally, if not eliminated. So if you look at this pyramid here on this slide, you will see that we have all these grains are located in the base, so you eat them daily. The same for vegetables, fruit, legumes, and nuts and vegetables, and then olive oil, and then cheese and yogurt also could come on a daily basis. But weekly you eat seafood or fish, poultry, eggs, and sweets, and then a monthly basis you can eat meat. But not some of us, or not most of us, cannot really stick with this. I like meat to eat meat, but I may look for other options as well. So as I mentioned, some of us may not be able to stick with that monthly consumption of red meat. But Mediterranean diet gained its attention in 1950s when the researchers did a study, and they see that Italian people has less cardiovascular diseases and other chronic diseases than the people in the United States. And then when they were comparing all these variables to see which one has an effect, they found that their diet is based on Mediterranean diet and more focused on consumption of veggies and fruits and nuts. So research has shown that shifting to a considerably more plant-based diet can decrease risk for stroke and a range of cardiovascular diseases, and also colorectal and prostate cancer. And also in another meta-analysis, plant-based diets were associated with an improvement in obesity-related inflammatory profile and could therefore use for therapy and prevention as well. But there are other options as well in case people cannot go with just Mediterranean diet. So there was a campaign many years ago, about a decade ago, on Meatless Monday, and it started at Johns Hopkins University and went all around the world, and many countries joined the campaign. And that's an easy campaign. It's just one day a day you don't eat meat, and it's just going meatless only one day a week will help replace saturated fat with unsaturated fat and lower cholesterol and heart problems. So even reducing your meat consumption one day a week can have a positive outcomes on lowering the cardiovascular diseases and also the lipid profile in your body. And also Meatless Mondays have long been advocated, and some hospitals have adopted this as a standard food services practice. So if you go to Johns Hopkins related hospitals, on Mondays they don't serve food with meat, and everyone has picked up that culture, and they make different delicious dishes with just vegetables, grains, and fruits. So on an individual basis, shifting to Meatless Monday at home also can facilitate a transition to a more plant-based and healthier diet. So if your hospital has not picked up this yet, please advocate for that and try to bring the culture to your hospital, to your area, and then you also can do the same with your family. I feel more comfortable with Meatless Monday. You can pick up Meatless Tuesday if that's easier for you. It's just the concept is not eating as much as meat as we used to eat during the week. There are other resources, for instance, food-based dietary guidelines from the Food and Agriculture Organizations of the United Nations. That's something that you can use, also get more information. And Harvard website also, it has several strategies to reduce red meat and elevate your plate. You can go with one of these strategies. If you cannot go with the very hard one, you can go with the very easier one, and you can also pass the information to your patients, right? And then also there is a really good article on the New York Times, The Meat Lover's Guide to Eating Less Meat. Please go and look at this, and I'll put the link over here for you, so you will see that there are several ways that you can just change your dish in a way that you can lower your meat consumption. Another good resource is Healthcare Without Harm, and the people and planet friendly food. You will get some recipes and more information. And if you cannot go with any of these strategies, you cannot lower your meat consumption, just add more veggies and fruits to your plate, or use more grains in your dishes. Add some grains to the recipe. So beef in moderation can definitely be part of a healthy diet. Don't feel like you have to put the beef completely aside of your diet. Just be sure to eat plenty of fresh fruit, vegetables, nuts, fresh fruit, legumes, and fish along with your red meat. And minimize processed foods, added sugars, and empty carbs. I want to also talk a little bit about advocacy. And there are several organizations that are advocating for less meat production and less meat consumption to have a better and healthier planet. And one of them is 50 by 40, which is a coalition of organizations dedicated to cutting the global production and consumption of animal products by 50% by 2040. And your organization, your hospital, even the Alabama State Nurses Association can be part of this advocacy group to work with them and pass the information to their members and their staff and their nurses, and has a role in reducing the production of meat consumption. Another advocacy group is the Healthcare Without Harm. Also, they're looking for organizations and groups to join them to get them reach their goal on environmentally responsible healthcare. So I also want here to talk a little bit about organic foods. I hear a lot from my students and my colleagues, does it really worth to pay more for organic foods? So I just want to go through some facts here. So to be able to have an organic product, the organic crops must be produced without conventional pesticides, including herbicides, synthetic fertilizers, sewage sludge, bioengineering, or ionizing radiation. So organic foods have less chemicals and pesticides, harmful ones. And also organically raised animals must be given organic feed and kept free of growth hormones and antibiotics. So if you are concerned about this in your meat, then organic food would be an option for you. And also organic farm animals must have access to the outdoor, including pasture land or for grazing. So this is also some ethical issues that we want for our cattle or birds to be out there and not packed in very small place until they grow and they are ready to come to the market. So therefore, chances of getting pesticide residue are much less with organic food. So if you don't want to feed your children or yourself pesticides residues that can come from apple, peach, or spinach, or any other vegetables and fruits, then organic food is an option for you. Toxic and persistent pesticides do accumulate in the soil, water, and of course our body. But again, organic foods cost more than the conventional foods. So because of that, the food experts caution that while the big picture is important, you must make the decision that makes the most sense for you. If you are going to consume less vegetables and fruits because you don't want to pay that much of money to get a big amount of the organic fruit and vegetables, then that's not a good choice for you. So you should be able to pay for organic food and get the proper amount to consume every day. But if you can't, then you may go with conventional foods. So studies have shown that organic produce tends to have higher levels of vitamin C, certain minerals and antioxidants. That's good. And also they have shown that organic milk and meat can be richer in nutrients, including omega-3 fatty acids. That's also helpful. And another study have shown that switching to an organic diet may decrease levels of cancer-causing glyphosate, which is the main ingredient in a common pesticide, by 70% in participants' bodies in only 1 week. By avoiding conventional foods, you could be ingesting an estimated 700 fewer chemicals. That another study showed that. So those are all good information about using organic. So if you can afford it, you can switch to organic. I switched to organic for some of my consumptions. For instance, for peach and apple, I buy, and also berries, I buy organic. But I have 5 people in my family, and I may not afford to get chicken or beef organic. Sometimes I do, but most of the time I don't do so. That we just use a little less meat and red meat and white meat to avoid getting more of the antibiotics. But for most of my veggies and fruits, I try to get them organic. So I hope that you enjoyed this presentation. Here are the references that you may want to take a look at it. And please do not hesitate to reach out to me through the email address that is located in the first slide for questions and any concerns that you might have. Thank you so much for watching the video. Bye-bye.